My name is Elise. I'm 19 years old, and I've been married to Daniel for 11 years. If you'd asked me 5 years ago what I thought forever looked like, I'd have pointed to our Sunday mornings, bare feet on cold kitchen tiles, his hand always finding the small of my back while we brewed coffee, the quiet way our bodies leaned into each other like two parts of the same thing. But lately, I've felt like I'm watching our life through a fogged-up window. I can see the shapes of what we once had, but I can't feel it anymore. That sentence. I told my husband I needed a year with my first love. It sounds like a betrayal. Maybe it is. But not in the way people usually think. I haven't cheated. I haven't packed a suitcase or run to anyone's arms. But I've done something that feels even scarier. I've started listening to the part of me that still remembers who I was before Daniel. And that voice, that version of me, is louder now than it's ever been. It didn't happen all at once. That's the cruel part. It was slow. Quiet. A dull erosion of something that used to feel electric. When Daniel and I first got together, I was 26 and starry-eyed. He was stable, funny in an effortless way, and endlessly kind. Our chemistry wasn't fireworks, it was a slow-burning flame. The kind you trust to keep you warm. And for a long time, it did. We built a life that looked good from the outside, shared Spotify playlists, matching bathrobes, a garden full of overwatered basil. We knew each other's coffee orders, which side of the bed we hated, what time the other got moody or anxious. We were good. Until we weren't. I think the first time I noticed something was off was last winter. It was a small moment, but I've come to learn that the smallest moments are the ones that quietly rearrange everything. I was sitting on the couch, reading, legs tucked under me. Daniel came home from work and kissed me. He always does that, a quick kiss on the forehead, then one on the mouth. Ritualistic. But this time, the kiss felt choreographed. His lips were warm, sure, but they didn't linger. They didn't search. It was the kind of kiss you give a friend in a hospital bed. After that, I started paying attention. How we cuddled during movies, or didn't. How his hand would land on my thigh and just stay there, not in a way that invited anything, not even comfort. Just a placeholder, like he was remembering a step from a dance. He still asked how my day was, but his eyes stayed on his phone. We still had sex, but it felt like checking a box. I used to feel seen. Touched. Wanted. Now it's like my body is a room he knows how to walk through in the dark. No pauses. No surprises. And me? I started pulling away in ways I couldn't name. I stayed up late after he fell asleep. I picked fights over dishes just to feel something. I stopped reaching for his hand in public. But the moment that undid me, the one I keep circling back to, happened 3 months ago. We were at a dinner party with old friends. I was laughing, wine-drunk, telling some story from college. And someone mentioned his name, Aiden. My first love. It was just a casual, throwaway reference. But when I heard his name, something inside me surged. Like my body remembered him before my mind did. I caught my breath. Looked down at my wine. And for the rest of the night, I couldn't stop thinking about how alive I'd felt back then. Not because Aiden was better than Daniel. Not because I wanted to go back. But because I was different. I used to be someone who burned bright. Someone who kissed with her whole body. Someone who didn't feel invisible in the middle of her own life. That night, after the dinner party, Daniel reached for me in bed. I let him. But it felt like pressing two cold palms together, hoping for heat. I stared at the ceiling, quietly aching. Not just for Aiden. But for me. For the woman I used to be. And I think that was the moment. The exact second I realized something had shifted. Not just in my marriage, but in me. Daniel is a pediatric surgeon. Which means, by default, he's everyone's hero, the calm in chaos, methodical under pressure, gentle with pain. It's part of what made me fall in love with him. But lately, that calmness, that steadiness, feels more like distance. And I don't know how to bridge the space between us without screaming. I think he senses it, too, in his own way. He's trying. I'll give him that. He does the things he believes are love: surprise takeout, back rubs when I'm reading in bed, sliding his hand under my shirt when we're brushing teeth. But I don't want his hands. Not yet. I want his attention. His curiosity. I want him to ask what's been rattling around inside me and wait for the answer. He thinks love lives in the physical, in doing, in touching, in fixing. I've always needed something softer, the love that lives in listening. Last week, we had one of those fights that start small but spiral fast. It was about laundry. They always are, aren't they? I'd asked him, gently, I thought, to stop mixing my delicates in with the regular wash. And he cracked a joke. Something about how I should be glad he even remembered to do laundry. I laughed at first. But it was the wrong laugh. You know the one, too tight, too sharp. You think helping with laundry is a personality trait? I said, trying not to raise my voice. You don't even ask what I need anymore. You just assume. He blinked. Elise, it's laundry. You're acting like I forgot your birthday. But it wasn't about the laundry. Not really. It was about how I'd cried in the car the day before and never told him. About how I'd gone to a bookstore on my lunch break and stared at a travel guide to Italy for 15 minutes, remembering a trip I almost took with Aiden when we were 20. It was about how I feel like I'm holding my breath in my own marriage. I walked away mid-conversation. I could feel my heart racing and didn't want to say something I'd regret. Later that night, he tried to make peace the only way he knows how, by touching me. He slid into bed, curling behind me, hand grazing my hip, mouth close to my neck. Elise, he whispered, voice low and careful, like a scalpel. I'm sorry. Let me make it up to you. I tensed. Not out of anger, but because I felt invisible again, not Elise, but a body-shaped apology. Can we just, not right now? I said, softer than I felt. His hand dropped. I felt his breath change, fast then slow again, like he was trying to regulate something inside him. I don't get you anymore, he said into the dark. You keep pulling away and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I turned to face him. My throat tightened. I wanted to say, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just not doing what I need. But I didn't. Instead, I said, neither do I. And that was the worst part, because it was true. I didn't understand me either. How I could still love Daniel, still admire him, still miss him while he was in the same room, and yet, feel lonelier in our bed than I ever did when I was single. I think he sees the gaps, too. He just fills them differently. With his hands. With action. With sex that's gentler than I deserve, but emptier than it should be. The next morning, he made my coffee exactly the way I like it, almond milk, no sugar, sprinkle of cinnamon. He placed it beside me like a peace offering. I said thank you and kissed his cheek. But when our eyes met, there was something missing. Like we were both standing in a burning house, holding hoses, pretending it wasn't already ash. I used to love Sunday mornings. Before everything started unraveling, they were sacred. No alarms. Just sunlight bleeding through the curtains, coffee in bed, the slow, lazy kind of intimacy that made it feel like we were the only people in the world. Now, they just feel quiet. Awkward, even. Like we're actors on a stage we built ourselves, still playing the parts, even though neither of us remembers the script. This morning, I was making scrambled eggs in his oversized hoodie, one of the few pieces of clothing that still made me feel held. Daniel walked in, shirtless, hair messy, a sleepy half-smile on his face. The kind of look that used to do things to me. He walked up behind me, slipped his arms around my waist, and kissed my neck. I froze. Just for a second, barely even long enough for him to notice. But I felt it in my spine. The recoil. The way my stomach twisted like my body knew something my heart still refused to say out loud. "Morning," he murmured into my skin, swaying with me gently. "You smell like maple syrup and me. It's a good combination." I laughed, a little too forced. "That's romantic." He turned me around, cradled my face like I was glass, and kissed me. I kissed him back. I always do. But it was mechanical. Automatic. Like following muscle memory I never questioned until recently. His lips were soft, warm. Familiar. And that was the problem. I wanted to feel swept up. To melt. To ache. Instead, I felt trapped. Not because of him. He wasn't doing anything wrong. But because my body was betraying me. Or maybe it was just being honest for the first time in years. He deepened the kiss, just slightly, a hand sliding from my hip to the curve of my lower back. And that's when it happened. The little slap. Playful. Familiar. The kind of thing he used to do while I cooked, and I'd roll my eyes, laugh, swat him away. This time, I flinched. Barely. But I did. And it was like something shifted in the air, sharp and silent. He pulled back just enough to study me. His hand still resting lightly on my waist. "You okay?" he asked, voice soft. "Yeah," I said too quickly. Just startled me. He searched my face for a beat too long. I could tell he didn't believe me, but he didn't push. He just nodded, stepped back, and opened the fridge. And that's how we work now. Small moments. Tiny betrayals. He pretends not to notice. I pretend I'm fine. That night, we watched a movie on the couch. Something stupid and loud. I wasn't paying attention. I could feel him eyeing me sideways, like he was waiting for the right moment. Halfway through, he pulled the blanket up over both of us and curled closer. He started tracing lazy circles on my thigh, the way he always does when he wants to ease into something. I tensed. Not obviously. Not dramatically. But I pulled my legs in just slightly. Closed my body off. He didn't stop, but I could feel the question forming in him. The confusion. The hesitation. "Elise," he said, barely above a whisper. "Talk to me." I stared at the screen. "About what?" He paused. "I don't know." "Us?" I bit the inside of my cheek. I hated how he said it, like us was a foreign language we'd both forgotten. Like I was the one who wandered off. "I'm tired," I said instead. "Long day." He nodded, swallowed his frustration. Turned back to the screen. Later, when he kissed me goodnight, slow, lingering, I let him. But inside, I felt like a locked door he didn't realize he no longer had the key to. As he pulled me closer in the dark, his hand slid under my shirt, resting on my stomach. And I just stared at the ceiling, eyes wide open, heart heavy and numb all at once. Why does everything have to turn into sex? It happened on a Thursday night. We had both taken the day off, something rare for Daniel, and he'd made dinner reservations at a little French place downtown. Candlelit, overpriced, cozy in that curated way that always felt like pretending. I think he thought it would help. Reignite something. He even wore cologne, the one I used to steal spritzes of when we were dating. His version of trying. And I noticed. I did. I just didn't feel anything. Still, I played along. I put on a dress I hadn't worn in months, did my hair, touched up my lipstick in the car's visor mirror. When he looked over and smiled, I smiled back. I wanted to want this, the date, the spark, him. But my body was ahead of me. Already tightening. Already bracing for disappointment. Dinner was fine. Conversation was light. Safe. He told a story about a resident in his program who accidentally dropped a clamp in someone's abdomen. I laughed in the right places, sipped wine, nodded. Then he reached across the table and touched my hand. "Elise," he said, eyes earnest. "Can I say something without you shutting down?" I blinked. Nodded slowly. "I miss you." His voice caught slightly. "I feel like you're in the room, but not with me. And I know something's wrong, but you won't tell me what it is." I swallowed, hard. My fork stilled on my plate. He went on. "If you don't want me to touch you, I need you to say it. If you're unhappy, really unhappy, I need you to tell me. I'm not a mind reader. I'm your husband. Let me in." I stared at the little pool of sauce on my plate. I felt it before I heard it, that heat rising in my chest, behind my eyes, tight in my throat. And then it spilled. All of it. "I don't know what I want anymore," I said, louder than I meant to. "I'm trying. I swear I am. But every time you touch me, I feel like I'm being asked to be someone I'm not anymore." Daniel blinked. "Someone you're not anymore?" "I don't even recognize myself in this marriage." My voice broke. I wake up every day wondering when I stopped feeling like a person and started feeling like a checklist. A duty. A body you know how to navigate but don't see. He looked stunned. Hurt. "That's not fair, Elise," he said quietly. "I love you. I've always loved you." I nodded, tears streaming now, not caring who was watching. "I know you love me," I whispered. "But you don't know me anymore. And maybe I don't either." He leaned back in his chair, folded his arms. "Is this about Aiden?" The name landed like a punch. I stared at him. "What?" "You've been different since that dinner party. Since someone brought him up. Don't think I didn't notice. You've been somewhere else ever since." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because he wasn't wrong. Not completely. But it wasn't about Aiden, not really. It was about the girl I was when I loved him. The fire I used to have. The way I used to feel alive, even when it hurt. Daniel stared at me across the table. "Are you telling me you want him back?" "No," I said instantly. Then softer, "I want me back." The silence that followed was sharp. Final. The clink of glasses and low hum of surrounding conversations carried on, oblivious. He paid the bill without a word. We walked to the car like strangers. That night, when we got home, I went to the guest room without saying anything. I closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and sobbed into my hands like something had broken open. And maybe it had. I thought about how much easier it would be if I could just want him again the way I used to. How simple it would be if a kiss still lit something in me instead of pulling me under. But I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I used to think intimacy meant touch. Now I knew it meant truth. And the truth was, I felt lost. I felt ashamed. And I hated myself for hurting him. But underneath the guilt and confusion, something else was starting to rise, quiet and insistent, the realization that I wanted time. Not to be with Aiden. But to be with the part of me I left behind when I became us. It's been 3 weeks since that night at the restaurant. We never really talked about it afterward. We just shifted. Daniel started sleeping on the edge of the bed. I kept falling asleep on the couch. We still lived together, still made coffee, still shared the same roof in silence. But we'd become polite strangers. Careful. Measured. Almost tender in the way people are when they're afraid they might shatter something by speaking too loudly. I hated it. And I couldn't seem to stop it. I caught glimpses of the man I married everywhere. In the way he still brought my car in for service without asking. In the way he always left the hallway light on for me when I worked late. In the way he still looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching, like he was trying to remember something about me. Or forget it. And then there were the things that cut. He no longer reached for me in bed. He stopped teasing me about the way I overwater our plants. He didn't kiss me goodbye when he left for the hospital. I told myself I wanted space. But the silence felt heavier than I ever imagined. One night, I walked into the kitchen and found him sitting at the table, still in his scrubs, elbows on his knees, staring at nothing. His face looked different. Not angry. Just tired. Like someone who'd run out of language. I stood there, watching him for longer than I should have. Wanting to go to him. Wanting to say something, anything, that could stitch us back together. Instead, I asked, "Did you eat?" He nodded.